Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 34 of SuperSports, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of vehicles which bridge the divide between sports cars and full-on supercars. And some of the vehicles in this series, and also some in the Ultimate Exotics series for my supercars, are kind of controversial. They're vehicles which you could make an argument, and sometimes I wouldn't necessarily disagree with them, that some vehicles kind of straddle the line between both categories. Vehicles such as the McLaren MP4, the Lexus LFA, the Nissan GTR, which are kind of super sports and supercar almost at the same time. This vehicle is kind of one of those vehicles. It's a Viper, which under normal circumstances I don't think many people would consider to be a supercar, but this is the ultimate street-going Viper. The ACR, the hardcore lighter track day special, with that highly noticeable massive rear wing and very distinctive paint job. Is it a supercar? Because in the past on this channel I've considered the Devon GT6, which is based on a Viper, to be a supercar, and yet this car is still in the SuperSports series. Well, I would say that it's not a full-on supercar, but it is definitely a supersport. And I would say that this is about as close as you can get to being a supercar without being one. And the reason why I don't consider this car to be a full-on supercar is relatively simple. Being a supercar is more than just about performance. Because at the end of the day, you could make a hot hatch that can get around a track as quickly as a Veyron, in theory, but it still wouldn't be a supercar. It's still just a tuned hatchback. So performance alone does not dictate a vehicle's category. It's about more than that. It's about design, packaging, marketing, all that kind of thing, even the price to some degree. So as such, I would say that the ACR is definitely a very, very high-end, if not the top of the supersports tree. It may even be the best all-round supersports car on Gran Turismo, but not quite a supercar, because the marketing of the Viper, the price, etc., just isn't supercar level. It's not even trying to be. Now that being said, this car, as I alluded to with the hatchback scenario, does have the performance to take on most of Gran Turismo's supercars, and in many cases, the majority of cases in fact, beat them. There are very, very few supercars which can actually beat the Viper ACR around the track. Only, say, 5 or 6, if that, can actually genuinely outrun the Viper ACR. It's that good of a track car. And to be honest, it's the kind of car which, even if you're not really a fan of the Viper, I would just recommend buying, because it's one of those vehicles that you need to own on Gran Turismo 6. Kind of like the Tomicara ZZ2. Regardless of whether you like it or not, it's just such a beneficial tool to have in your garage. There's no point in not buying it, especially considering that it only costs 100 grand. Now 100 grand to a new player seems like a long way off, but it's really not. That's the same price as a KTM Crossbow, but this is a significantly better all-round performance machine than pretty much any other 100 grand car on Gran Turismo, and as such it was in my top list of the highest value for money cars in the game. So what do you get for the money? Well, it's a Viper, so you get a huge engine, an 8.4 litre V10, front mounted, which you can supercharge up to 1125 horsepower. It's not quite as torquey as some of the other Vipers, but it does still put out 940 foot-pounds, which is nothing to be sniffed at, of course. It's pretty light, only 1,242 kilos, and it puts out 906 horsepower per tonne in fully tuned form, which is pretty impressive, to say the least. Its maximum PP in normal form is 674. You fit it with a flat floor, you can get it over 700. It's one of the only road cars on the game that can get over 700. I've actually had mine up to 704 PP, which is ridiculously high for a road car. And to me, the Viper's always been one of those vehicles which, especially the ACR, is just not the kind of vehicle which I would have expected to be as good around the track as it is. The Viper, not because it's American, because as I've said before, I love American cars, but the Viper just doesn't look like a track car. The whole ethos of the car, to me, is more like a dragster or a hot rod. Massive engine, who cares about anything else? But that's just not been the case. It's one of the most competitive cars of its type in the world, not just from America. And we've seen that from lap records, from the ACR, racing exploits in the GTSRs, and various other categories such as the Comp Coupe and various road cars. Even setting world records for speeds in the hands of Hennessy and other tuning companies. The Viper is an incredible machine to work from, regardless of whether it's tuned or not. This is one of the more expensive Vipers at 100 grand, but what you get for that little bit of extra cash is, as well as the straight line speed that all of the Vipers give you, you get vastly improved levels of downforce, grip and handling. And around the track there is very little, especially in the street car category, that can actually outrun this car on tracks which allow it to really use its assets to its best ability, such as the Le Mans, the Nürburgring, Sierra, etc. It's an incredible track car. Better really than it has any right to be. In a straight line, it can keep up with any of the other Vipers, and therefore most of the cars in the game. The top speed is over 290 under its own power, without NOS or draft, and the acceleration is incredibly quick. If you, by some chance, haven't bought the ACR yet, or any of the Vipers in general, and you are looking for a dependable and extremely fast all-round track car, you pretty much want to check out the ACR. It's an amazing performance machine, regardless of whether you're a fan of it or not. To be honest, I'm not a particularly big fan of the Viper, but you have to respect that technology. It is an amazing performance machine, and one of the reasons why I do respect it so much is because it does things in a very old-fashioned way. It's a simple but highly effective super sports car. But that's it overall for this particular episode featuring the Viper ACR. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.